there, welcome to my channel. My name is Linda. I have some fun crafts for you today. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. How come that sounded funny? I don't know. I'm going with it. Today we're going to be working on some rustic farmhouse. Every day, shall we call it eclectic home decor. One doesn't go with the other, but that's okay. So let's get started with project number one. For this project, I'm going to be using this framed print from a thrift store that I found. I'm going to be using this wood piece from Dollar Tree and 10, count them, 10 paint sticks. And these are long paint sticks, but really depending on the frame you get, whether you can use long or short. So what I do when I go to a thrift store is when they have these canvas prints, I mean, this was like $2, feel the framing around it. You can feel if it's just a flat, plain frame like you get at Dollar Tree, or if you can feel some anatomy to it. So obviously I could feel that, and then I know it's going to be a nice looking frame. So when I take this off, see it's nice. It's got some, anatomy, like I said. So the first thing I'm going to do is just fit this wood piece to the back and see how long I want to cut it. And then I'm going to do the same with my paint sticks. And let's see, for my particular frame, I'm going to be cutting all of these at about 10 inches. And I'll just cut them outside because it's boring to see. And here, look at that. Everything's done. I've sanded all the, rough cut edges and everything like that. This is actually pretty simple. I like how it turns out. I'm going to use this chalkboard paint. Now, I've not used the actual paint on chalkboard paint. I've only just used the spray paint. And I didn't know how, smooth it was going to be painting it on, but it actually turns out nice, because in our area, I went to get my spray paint can. I'm like, it's empty. And all we had down at our local hardware store was this, but it was actually, for the price, you got like 5 times the amount. And I do about 2 coats on this. But yeah, it turned out as smooth as I think the spray paint. Okay, and I was going to say something. What was I going to say? Oh, if you didn't want to use paint sticks, you could do just, one long board for this. I wanted to do paint sticks because I was trying to kind of do a similar effect as like notebook writing paper because it's a chalkboard, and I was thinking like a grocery lists type chalkboard, and I thought paint sticks would kind of give us those, notebook paper lines. I don't know. I could have went either way. But if you just want to do one board, that would be fine. Or, one board for the title, which is what that, Dollar Tree board is. And then one board for just one solid piece, to write on. And I will say you do get a lot more room if you just kind of go with one piece of wood, which I'm kind of like 60-40. I should have went with one piece, but I was kind of, my brain was thinking separate pieces. So there you go. I'm using Waverly Antique Wax, or I did. You can see I already kind of did that off camera because, we've done that a tons of times. And I do that to darken the frame. And then I'm coming over with Debbie's Design Diary DIY White Swan chalk paint. I will do a couple of coats. That way, when I go to distress this, that Waverly Antique Wax will kind of come out around the paint. It'll kind of just darken that wood to give me a little bit more of a rustic look, basically. It's optional. You really don't have to do it, but I like to do it. If you've been with me a while, it's my thing. All right, so here I'm coming in and just doing a little distressing. See, you can already see just on those lines that Waverly Antique Wax comes up a lot darker through that White Swan chalk paint. There you go. That's why I do it. And I just do very light distressing, just around kind of the sharp edges. Now, although I do like how this looks, it looks just a little plain. It needs some personality, so I'm going to take black chalk paint mixed with water and do some splatters, just some really light splatters, although I need to change my thing up because I don't want you guys getting sick of, she always does the same things. I do. I can't help it. We all are kind of creatures of habit, right? Anyway, so since I use chalk paint on this, it takes like 28 days to cure. So, and normally I don't do it a whole lot, but this is going to be used like kind of immediately. So I do want to go in and do a clear coat on it. I like to use matte. I'm not a shiny gal, but that way I can use it right away. Now, whenever you use a chalkboard paint, you have to condition it. Only I don't really want to condition this one because it's the title, but I want to look like I condition it. We'll condition the other pieces. You'll see what I mean. So I just did a real light sanding with like a 220 grit sandpaper. Now I'm putting my little title on here just with some vinyl. I will have a free printable for you, link in my blog. I did it twice on there, so you have like 2 copies or whatever. there's a PDF and a PNG. Okay, so if you have electronic cutting machine, or, you know, if you want to take the PDF, some carbon paper, trace it, whatever. If you have beautiful handwriting, you know, you could do that way, or just use your own title. Maybe you don't want a title, I don't know, but it needed something. And then since, of course, I splattered the frame, I went ahead and I'm splattering this in white to match the frame, because this is black with white and then the frame is white with black splatters. So that was kind of my reasoning. Okay, so now we're like really going to condition the chalkboard part we're going to write on. You just take a piece of chalk and do what I'm doing here through all of them, and then you wipe it off. And I don't know that I ever, if this says it on the spray paint can, but it said once you condition it with this, then you wipe it off. On the paint can, you had to wait like a few days before you could actually like start writing on it or something. Maybe the actual paint has to set up, unlike the spray paint. I don't know. I've never heard of that before. I knew you had to condition it and wipe it off, but I let it set for a few days. Anyway, as you can see, wiping it all off. And now I'm going to use my quick hold glue, which is a derivative of E6000, and some small little nails. And I'm just going to get my pieces on here. So of course, I'll use the glue first, get it on the pieces on there, and then I'll add nails on either end of each wood piece. This one I'll do, you know, 4 nails because it's a bigger piece, right? I think the quick hold glue would have been perfectly fine if I wanted to sit and clamp it and stuff, but I didn't want to, because like Dollar Tree wood isn't that great and this board was kind of warped and I didn't want to sit and clamp it and wait. And so I'm like, I'll just put some nails in it, you know. So anyway, get that in there, and then I'm doing the same thing down this way. I've marked around the edges, you know, where all the boards are going to sit. And then, of course, add the glue, and then I'll skip ahead for you. I'm not going to make you watch all of it. And then I will nail all of the boards in, but you'll only see me nail some of the boards in. Now, another one of those boring things I'm not going to show you. I do this off camera, but you all know I will not leave my backside looking like this. Whether I'm keeping it or not, I just like to cover the back. It's just, I like it finished both sides. That's how my brain operates. I use that excuse a lot, don't I? Anyway, you could paint the back if you want to finish it off, or cover it with paper, which is what I do. I cover it with like a black cardstock. Looks nice, simple, done, ready to go. Once this last nail is in, I do want to use a hanger. If my frame would have been more lightweight, because I have some pretty strong magnets in my supply, or maybe even just a little bit smaller in size, I think it would look really cool, like, you know, on your refrigerator. But this is too big, so I'm adding a hanger to put on my wall. This is a Jihujic clothespin. You can get these like 4 or 6 to a pack. Hobby Lobby, they have black. You can see this is already black, or natural colored. And I'm going to use it to hold my chalk. So all I did when I pulled this out of the package, distressed it a little bit, added white splatters so that it would match my little title area up there, huh? Yep. I'm going to add some E6, I want to say E6000 because that's what this is. Quick hold glue. Put the clothespin on. I let it set for about 10 minutes because it's 10 minutes to set, 24 hours to cure. But after 10 minutes, I can throw my chalk into it safely. And that makes this project complete. We'll take a look at the results at the end of the video, although you already saw it at the beginning, but we'll look a little more in depth at the end. All right, time to move on to our eclectic project number 2. For this project, I'm going to use this cutting board from Hobby Lobby. I think it was like $7.99 normal price, which I was surprised because of how long it is. But, you know, 40% off is cheaper. I will have a free pattern for you. Of course, link to my blog in the description box for all the patterns and printables today. This will also have a little printable with it. Now, I'm going to cut mine out of wood, like 1/8" wood, like kind of the thin wood from, it's not Dollar Tree wood, but like that thin wood. But you could cut it out of foam board, especially if, you know, you don't use power tools or anything like that. Balsa wood is nice because you can cut balsa wood with scissors. So some options for you, all right? I'm just going to show a little bit of cutting it out with my jigsaw. It actually goes through this, you know, 1/8" wood fairly quickly and easy because the wood is so thin. I'm only going to show a little bit because I think stuff like this, I do want to show you the process. But like things like cutting it out, sanding, painting, to me it just gets a little bit boring to see, but I want you to see that I did it, right? unless I make my husband do it. But this one I did my own. But yeah, it cut really easy and everything. And as far as the actual design goes, I was watching a thrifting video and I saw this in the background. It was like a sign or something somebody made with a rooster on it. And I thought it was so stinking cute, but I don't want to copy the exact same thing, but I paused it and then I just started kind of freehanding my own design similar to that one, but with a little bit of Lindified in it. And that's how this pattern came about. Okay, so now I'm sanding everything. Of course, not only the rough edges, but whenever I sand, kind of just the top edges. I like mine to be kind of rounded. Here, see, I'm kind of going on that side sort of a little bit, the top side, I guess to say, because like I said, I like my pieces kind of rounded out. And now what I'm doing is I sand everything. I'm just making sure if I have to sand both pieces or one or the other, that as I put them together, they have a nice tight fit. And if you're going to use balsa wood or foam board, just make sure they have a nice fit. Now for the wing, I'm going to use a heart from my supply. I did not put this on the pattern because I figure we all have hearts in our supply. This one actually came from Walmart. I thought it would look just as cute, and they're like 67 cents. But like I said, we all probably have hearts, or we can freehand a heart or something like that, or maybe you want to use something else. I'm giving you creative freedom right here, okay? Now I'm taking Waverly Antique Wax mixed with water, of course, and I'm just kind of pre-painting all the wood because it's all very light wood. And I was going to literally just paint the whole thing, but somewhere in the process I thought, oh, it'll look cool if I take just a few select pieces like these three and cover them with scrapbook paper. So I've got this red dot. I've got one cut out already. I've got 2 more to go. And then I thought one more coordinating piece. So I'm going to use this script paper that I thought looked nice with that red dot paper to cover the heart/wing area. And I'm cutting each piece just a little bit short so you see that wood all the way around. And yes, I'll still paint these wood pieces, but it's just going to make them pop up a little bit is basically what I'm trying to do. It is all optional. You can just paint the whole thing and rustic it out as much as you want. All right, but I thought paper would just add a little fun personality to it. All right, kind of cutting our last little piece here. Perfect. Again, nice and short, so you see that little bit of wood. And now for the red papers, I'm going to use this Dixie Belle chalk paint in the color Rusty Nail. And then for the rest, well, not all of it, the main body and the wing, I'm using Dixie Belle chalk paint in the color Drop Cloth. I'm only doing the outer part of this, and then for the body, I will do the whole thing. And as I'm painting this, I'm like, this is not looking, the main body, I'm like, this looks like a duck. So if you like ducks, you can make this a duck with a wing. Look at it when it's a duck, it is. So now we're going to call this a dooster because our last one we had a whatever I called it. So now we've got a dooster. I'm painting the whole thing. It's a duck and a rooster in one. Got to be a little silly with this, right? It makes our video fun. And then I've got a yellow and an orange chalk, or just a regular paint, matte paint mix, but it was too bright. So I'm adding in some like light brown kind of matte color paint to kind of give it more of a brown tone, a little bit more of a farmhousey look. And of course, I'm going to paint the legs here and the beak. So I'm going in nice and slow, trying to be nice and neat about it, especially on this piece, because I didn't want to cut the beak separately. I just thought it would be easier if it was one whole unit versus trying to, make sure the beak fit as well. Anyway, that's what I did. All right, so now we're finishing up our painting on our dooster we're coming in and doing the red on these 3 pieces. I paint front and back because the back, you know how I finish the back off anyway, but these hang off the edges of our dooster, so the back definitely needs painted. The front, I guess I didn't really have to because paper's going to cover it, but there you go. That's my story. Now I'm coming in on the cutting board. Now you could just use a rectangular, like salvage board would be cute. It doesn't have to be a cutting board. And this is like just kind of a cream and a white paint mixed together, so it's a little bit lighter than the drop cloth. I don't want it the same exact color as my dooster, the body of the dooster. So I'm just kind of painting a rectangular area right in the center of the cutting board. Now you all know what's going to happen here. Since I'm using scrapbook paper, I like to sew around my papers, so here I'm doing that. And I'm sorry guys, those who've been with me for so long, I always have to continually explain this because we get new people all the time. But if you want to, say it with me. I like to sew on my scrapbook paper just as if I'm sewing on fabric. I think it adds a nice kind of country look to it. If you want the look of sewing, but you don't want to actually sew, or you're not a sewer, you can take like a fine Sharpie marker, do little dash lines. You can buy stamps, acrylic stamps or wood stamps in like the scrapbook section of craft stores. They make stamps that look like sewing lines and you can stamp those on. That works as well. But I just like to add this for that kind of country look. So there you go. Finish this up and then we're going to add a little more texture to our paper pieces. We're going to open our scissors and using that open blade area there, we're just scraping along the edges of the paper. It roughens it up and it gives it kind of a nice little halo effect on our paper. It's just going to help when we glue it onto the wood. It's going to give us a little bit of depth. Just like if you're going to do all painting on the wood, maybe you want to go in with, a little bit of shadowing with some paint. Those of you who do a lot of painting to give it that depth. That's all that this does. And you can really see it here on this paper too. It just kind of helps lift it up off of the wood is what I'm trying to say. I guess I could have said that 10 minutes ago. Now we're coming in with our dooster and I'm distressing around the edges. I'm really trying to push hard and distress in the center to get some really nice, deep rustic distress lines because that's just going to help give our dooster some character. It looks like a duck. Give our dooster some character here, and I'm going to do it on all the pieces, of course. You can skip this if you want, if you're not, you don't like to do a lot of sanding or anything like that. It's all purely choice. I'm just here to give you some inspiration. All right, we're going to do on the feet here. And I'm going to make sure like right at the bottom in the middle, I make a nice deep line right here. That way it looks like 2 feet. Huh? Okay. And then of course, only around the edges on the pieces that have paper. I am jumbling my words today. I'm so sorry. The pieces have paper because the rest of it's getting covered up, but at least around the edges, you'll see that little bit of a, variation. And then of course, I'm coming on my cutting board and I'm going to sand it down next to nothing. So you're probably wondering why'd you paint it anyway? So you at least saw something, right? And then of course, I'm going to bring in some black paint mixed with water and add a little bit of splatter on here on our little dooster because it's all going to make it look country cute. All right, now I'm going to finish up with our scrapbook paper by gluing it onto the coordinating wood pieces. I just like how that looks. I don't know. You can try it if you want or don't want. Like I said, I was going to do all paint, but then I decided this would just kind of be cute because you all know me. I'm a scrapbooker at heart. I've done it for years. And I have tons of scrapbook paper. Cabinets of scrapbook paper. So, I want to bring that in a little bit. Use that paper up. Now I'm taking some leftover wood pieces here. You could use balsa wood, foam board, cardboard, and I put a couple pieces on the back of the heart. We've done this before, but you'll see why in a minute in case you haven't seen it before. And then this is just a little sign. I picked up like 6 of these at a thrift store. They were 25 cents each. I'm just going to use the back side, and I'm using that Waverly wax mixed with water to darken it up a little bit like we did before. And then I'm bringing in the drop cloth here, painting it, and then I'm going to distress it. And then once that's done, I'm going to add a little quote on there. And yes, I made a free printable for you. Remember I told you this has a pattern and a printable. Now, I made mine the wrong size. I mean, the company, the little abbreviation company part, because it said Morningside Grain and Seed Company. I couldn't fit the company on there, so I just cut it off. And Bella's going to help me here to pull the sticky off. Once I've got that on there, then of course I'm going to take black paint mixed with water again and add some splatters so it matches in with all the other splatters we've been doing. Now we're back to our heart. That's the reason I put the wood on it, because it allows me to have space to add my moss around that. Because if I was just to put the moss on my dooster and I glue the heart on it, then I'm essentially really only sticking to the moss, and I want my heart to stick to the dooster. So that's why I add the extra space there with the wood. All right, now it's time to start gluing our dooster, which is slowly becoming a rooster, onto our cutting board. So just line everything up and get it into position. I'm using the Beacon Fabri-Tac glue here. It will work just fine, but you could use hot glue, or if you wanted to use E6000 or anything like that, anything will work perfectly wonderful. All right, we've got our last little piece. Our dooster is now a rooster. Yay! Super cute. All right, now I thought I don't want to just glue the little sign on. I want to make it look like, we hammered a sign on there type thing. So I'm drilling some tiny little holes here. Just tiny. You can actually nail it in if you want, but I like to do this part because it gives it more of a country look. And then I've got just a couple pieces of wire here. I don't remember what gauge they are. It doesn't really matter, but I kind of twist one end and then I put it through the little holes and I smush it against the holes, and then the back side I'll cut off the extra, and I'll lay that straight in flat against the sign, and then that wire takes up a little space. Right now our sign isn't going to lay flat because of that wire on the back, so I'm adding some cardboard that's about the thickness of the wire that gives us a little bit of gluing surface so that we can glue our sign to the cutting board, and then it makes it look like we wired it onto the cutting board. Is that understandable? Now I'm just adding some rope here. This is just rope from Dollar Tree. Just one knot, nice and easy, and then I'll cut off the ends. Nothing fancy here. You could add wood beads or something if you want, and then I'll kind of smoosh the ends a little bit. Then we're going to glue our wing on here. So super cute. And that makes this project complete. So I hope you enjoyed both of our eclectic projects today. Again, one project is not like the other, but they are both wood projects. They are both rustic, farmhouse, a little bit of country. There you go. Leave me a comment down below and let me know which project you are going to make today or tomorrow or in the next week or so. Please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps my channel to grow. I'm really trying to get it to grow. I worked so hard for you guys, and I love teaching you and giving you inspiration, but I just really want to see my channel to grow. So share this video if you would like as well. If you walked in here for the first time, you're just checking things out, you're digging what you saw, make sure before you click off, you hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss out on another video from me. Now, before I go, I'm going to leave you with one final thought. Deciding between right and wrong is essentially the battle between our human heart of what we want to do versus God's heart for what we should do, and it usually proves to be a difficult decision. In the Bible, the book of Romans, chapter 7 and verse 15, Paul says, "I do not understand what I do, for I want to do what I do not do, but what I hate, I do." Our thoughts try to rationalize our decision by trying to reason within ourselves the good versus bad mentality. We gather relevant information, we make a list of pros and cons, and we try to find the excuse to say this option is good when we already know what our rapidly beating heart is telling us. By allowing reasoning to direct our actions into doing what we know isn't the right thing, we disregard what God is saying and we let the whisper of the enemy flip the script. Just like in the story with Eve and the infamous apple, the slithering enemy with one twist of his words asks Eve, "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" Genesis 3:1. And Eve's thought process went from knowing exactly what is right and true to questioning what she thought she heard God say. The temptation was strong. She gave in and drug Adam down with her. They were blatantly aware of their choice, and when God came calling for them in the garden, they were so ashamed they hid from him. Their consequence of having their eyes wide open to knowing the difference between good and evil opened up the world to a whole different reality, a reality that needed a savior. In this life, we will constantly face decisions between choosing our flesh and choosing what God desires for us. As humans, the temptation will be strong to choose our flesh, but as Christians, we must let go of that initial desire and train our focus upward so that when we are in the midst of this right and wrong battle, we have the strength to do what Jesus wants. In the Bible, the book of Colossians, chapter 3, verse 1, "Since then, you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God." In conclusion, the enemy may have paved the way from deception to picking wrong over right to eyes wide open for Adam and Eve, which resulted in the consequence of their action being passed down to all humanity. But Jesus conquered this punishment with his death on the cross. He paved the way for redemption to embracing righteousness over evil, to eyes focused on him for all eternity for those who believe in him. Because of this, whenever we are in the midst of a difficult decision between what we want in our flesh and what we know God wants, we now have the Holy Spirit living in us to give us the wisdom to choose wisely. In essence, choose God. And as it says in the book of Proverbs chapter 3, verse 6, in all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. I thank you for sharing your time with me, and I'll talk with you again soon. Bye.